Welcome back to Next Level Rides. In today's video, what we're going to cover is a pretty controversial question. Should you modify your car? I think everybody should. I think every vehicle should be a bit unique and you should customize it to your own taste and liking. You shouldn't build it for anyone else and build it for yourself. That being said, let's get started with the questions. Question 1, how much is it going to cost to modify my vehicle? Well, I mean, that's going to be, again, a pretty loaded question. You should first know what you're looking to spend, and you should consider what you want to do with the vehicle. Are you going to have it for aesthetics? Are you looking to race it track? Are you trying to drag race it? Are you going to autocross it? Are you going to do time attack or lapping days? It's really going to depend. If it's just going to be a street vehicle that you're just going to enjoy and you just want it to be a little bit quicker, perform better, stop better, handle better, sound better, it's hard to say. I mean, starting with the basics, an intake system, it really depends what you want to do. Back in the day, we used to have something called the Swiss cheese mod, where you would take your factory air box and you drill a bunch of holes in front of the filter and you get the induction noise and sounds good. Probably doesn't do anything for power, but it ends up working. On the flip side, you could have, say, a Venturi intake, full carbon, or I believe it's Carbonio carbon intake, and those are upwards of $3,000-$4,000 just for the intake system alone. They're well engineered, they perform well, but at the end of the day, it really depends on your budget and what you're looking to do. Other things like exhaust system, you can get a full Akrapovic exhaust system for what, $10,000-$12,000, or you could do a muffler delete, get similar tone and be happy with it. So again, it's really going to depend. You could spend very little doing it on a budget, but on the flip side, say you're trying to build a competitive time attack vehicle, it could cost you upwards of $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. It depends what your ultimate goals are, what you want to do, if you could do it yourself. If you can't work on your own vehicle, you kind of have to factor in how much you're able to do yourself for small things and how much you're going to have to pay a shop to do. Because if you're paying a shop, labor can be upwards of $120 to, I think in San Francisco, $260 an hour, roughly. I don't know exactly. It's something you have to keep in mind. So even though the part is relatively inexpensive, you could be into it for the cost of the part for labor if you can't do it yourself. So figure out first what you want to do, consider the limitations of whatever platform you're getting, and then have somewhat of a mind and build a bit of a plan to start modifying your vehicle. Question number 2, how much do you want my car to differ from before? I don't know exactly what you're aiming for here, but I think if I'm reading between the lines is how much or how far of a build should you go? Again, similar to the first question, it really depends. If you wanted to be basic bolt-on OEM plus or OE plus, I'm a big fan of OE plus. I like to modify certain things in my vehicle to make it perform better than factory, look a little bit better, sound a little bit better, perform a little bit better in every aspect. But it really depends. You know, there's people that'll end up having a stanced vehicle where they have to throw it on a trailer and it's as good as a shiny paperweight, and there's other people's that have a fully done time attack vehicle that is solely for the track. Similar to question 1, you got to figure out what you want to do first before you do anything to your vehicle. So plan it out, figure it out, and then start throwing money at it. Question number 3, what are the risks of modifying my vehicle? Well, one thing you need to consider is that, like everything in this lifetime, there are certain consequences that come with certain actions. So as an example, modifying your vehicle by just tinting your front side windows could get you a lot more attention from the local police. So keep in mind, you know, if you're driving a little bit quick or whatever and they need to pick something out to give you a ticket for, it's probably going to be the window tint. If you have a loud exhaust, or if the vehicle is low, or if it stands out, you have to kind of expect that you're going to be on their radar and you're going to be getting a lot more attention, which some people are striving for, but other people kind of want to fly under the radar. So that's one thing to kind of consider, is any potential consequences from modifying the vehicle. Typically an OE plus kind of flies under the radar a bit. You don't really get too much attention, but if you have a straight piped welfare Civic because you've cut the exhaust on it and you think it's cool, well, you're gonna get a lot of negative attention. So that's something to consider. Another thing to consider is what you're gonna be doing to the vehicle. Again, like the previous question, if you're looking to make a very OE plus vehicle, then there's little that could end up happening to keep you stranded or on the side of the road. Another thing that you end up hearing is a lot of people end up dailying their race car. Well, you have to consider in the event that you've doubled the horsepower, or you drive it really hard, or on weekends you take it down to good old Mexico and race it really hard, you have to kind of consider that at some point, if it ends up breaking, what are you going to do with it? Are you okay getting a bus pass and taking the bus to work? Or are you going to plan for having a separate daily vehicle in the event that your race car ends up breaking? If there's a risk of you breaking it and it leaving you stranded, you have to kind of consider how you're going to go to work and pay for the rest of the modifications. Question number 4. Will I be able to fix it if something goes wrong? It's hard to say. It really depends how handy you are and what ends up going wrong. On the best case scenario, you end up having a coil pack or a plug that ends up going bad. If you get a little bit of water in it, you need to take it out, change a plug. That's relatively easy. On my Type R, I had to do that. I was able to limp it home, change the plugs, and it really wasn't a big deal. They're all on top. Couple of tools, it's simple to do. Best case scenario, I'll use an example with my old E90. I used to keep a pack of coil packs in the trunk in the event that I ended up having a misfire. So what I did is, in the event I had a misfire, because those like to chew coil packs, with the JB4 tuner, I was able to see what cylinder it was in. And then of course I would take that coil pack out, put a good coil pack in, and then I'd be able to go on with my trip or the day or whatever it was. But in a worst case scenario, if you're, again, doubling the horsepower, you're driving the car really hard, taking it every weekend to Mexico to drag race it or whatever you end up doing, in the event that, say, you clutch dump it and you destroy a clutch, a transmission, a diff, who knows, even the engine, that's something where you have to consider, can you change it yourself? You know, is it going to be in your car spot or your parking pad or in the garage? It's going to depend. So to kind of recap, again, if it's relatively easy, you could probably do it in a driveway. The worst case scenario, if you blow a motor or something worse, just kind of consider that you're going to have to be spending a little bit of money to get it fixed if you don't have either the tools, the space, or the mechanical know-how to be able to fix it for you. Question 5. What should I modify first on my vehicle? It's going to depend a little bit on what your plans are for the vehicle. If it's just purely for aesthetics, you might want to, or you might not do performance modifications at first. Around town, I see a lot of people that have stock intake, stock exhaust. They might get a little bit louder sound with a muffler delete and an exhaust tip or whatever, but then they end up going to lowering the vehicle, wheels, vinyl wrapping the vehicle itself, so they go more the cosmetic or aesthetic route. What I tend to do on every one of my vehicles, and what would be my top 5 if I had to tell somebody what to modify in their vehicle, and again, I'm not telling you what to do, I'm just telling you what I do. First thing I modify every single time would be intake. The induction noises are well worth it. You end up getting better spool and it ends up making the vehicle a little bit quicker and it sounds a lot better. So the overall driving experience goes up. Second is exhaust. Now, obviously, if you have a naturally aspirated vehicle or a turbo vehicle, with the turbo vehicle, you can also consider a downpipe. It may give you a check engine light, but for me, when it comes to a turbo vehicle, doing the full exhaust is the best way to go. The third modification would end up being a tune. So if you do a downpipe, generally the tune will get rid of the code or the check engine light that you would get for having a high flow downpipe. That would end up completing your basic 3 bolt-ons. Moving past that, I would say suspension, whether it's coilovers, lowering springs, air ride, I guess, if you wanted to do that. That would be my number 4. And number 5 would be wheels and tires. So obviously you need tires for the wheels. It kind of goes without saying. That'd be my top 5. Now, depending on how hardcore you want to go with that, you could go again with an OE plus type build where you have maybe lowering springs, a modest drop, maybe not the most aggressive fit wheels with the utmost stretch on the tires, which can cause any number of issues. But again, it's going to depend. You could go either hardcore or you could go relatively mild. Number 6, how will it affect my insurance coverage? Good question, and I know quite a bit about this. One thing to consider is modifications typically for insurance will be considered an exclusion on your policy. Most insurance policies don't allow you to modify your vehicle or don't insure modified vehicles. So one of the most important things to do is, if your vehicle is modified, either basic bolt-ons or heavily modified, it's a good idea to be disclosing it to your insurance company so that you don't have an issue in the event that you have, say, an accident where the vehicle is a total loss, or if it's stolen, to where they need to review and potentially deny your claim because of the modifications. That being said, there are some insurance companies that will insure your vehicle being modified. As an example, most of my vehicles are on collector's insurance. They are covered for the complete value of the vehicle and for the modifications. Just be a little bit careful that in the event that you end up having an accident and you didn't disclose to your insurance company that you put a big old Whipple blower on your Mustang or SRT or whatever, you could run into an issue when it comes time for the insurance to pay up. And we all know that a lot of the time they don't want to. So, question 7, how will it affect my trade-in value? Well, let's start by saying if you leased a vehicle, you shouldn't be modifying it to begin with. Now, that might be pretty harsh for me to say, but ultimately it's not your car to modify when you lease a vehicle. If the vehicle's leased, the bank's probably going to be pretty pissed off when they find out that you're modifying their vehicle. I mean, you could do as you wish. I'm kind of only here as a YouTuber giving simple answers to simple questions. If you finance the vehicle, technically you do own that vehicle. At some point you will be paying off that vehicle. Modify it accordingly. If you think that you're eventually going to trade it in for something newer, shinier in a couple of years, kind of consider that modifications don't increase the value of your vehicle. A lot of the times it will decrease it. And also consider how much money you might be losing when you trade that vehicle in. So if it's leased, I wouldn't do it. If you finance the vehicle and you're planning to trade it in, you have to kind of consider when you take it to the dealership. Imagine you take it to the dealership and you have a, 2019 Honda Civic and you want to trade it in on a new one. If you end up bringing it in and it's stanced out with knockoff rep wheels, with stretched Chinese tires, where you end up having some hole in the wall shop, crush bend, a 2.5 exhaust, straight pipe all the way back to the axle, and it's dumped and you have all your stickers on the side windows, the dealership's probably going to look at you and they're probably not going to take you seriously, and they're probably going to lowball you on your trade-in. As long as it's in good shape and you have the OEM parts, at least replace most of the parts with OEM and get the most for your trade-in value. Well, that's all the questions we have for today. A few basic ones, some interesting ones, especially the insurance and maybe the trade-in value one. Feel free to keep the questions coming. I'll be able to answer them as best I can. And as always, take care, and I'll see you guys next week.